Hello everybody. I'm showing you now around this Manitoban Earthship. Yeah, I'd like to share, so you have seen in the introduction already how it's been placed into its natural environment. So we're having here a custom design, which is pretty much based on all the 6 Earthship principles. There are slightly alterations according to the area, and also in the design I have made a few alterations from like the typical global model Earthships. So because I'd like to play with the forms of not just a straight line with windows and then all the features which come with the solar heat, and so far I'll talk more about. But we have here a typical model which is combined out of a simple survival Earthship together with a dome piece of Earthship or house. And it's been important for me to have like those curved features in it as well, because of the architectural design aspect of organic architecture. That's a very important piece for me. And so yeah, let's see. I'll show you around into the details what we have. Okay, here we are. So that is the dome part of it, and it's a bit windy outside. I hope I can get here a bit something to see. You can see in the background the rammed earth tire wall, which is here done in a curve, and it has on top of it like a wooden structure, and then it comes up to the roof. I'll get there in a second. Not this way. There we go. There, and then we have a skylight. And I'm wondering what this handle is here. It's to open the skylight. So kind of like the vent boxes, which are in the other part of the Earthship. So there's a wood stove, and here we have the greenhouse. And you can see here where the 2 pieces connect together. Here's the dome part of the house, and there is a simple survival typical Earthship greenhouse part. So we've been just right now building here on these planter boxes, where you can see the typical design with the can walls to recycle cans and help building and using less concrete for those walls. They are just in process right now. Here's a nice window front to the south. And then we have here in the back the bathroom. Yeah, it's in the middle of construction. Plumbing is happening. There's little earth hills here. The tire wall there is packed out with concrete in order to have it nice and dry for the bathroom. And here we have some of those bottle wall features. I'll try to get a bit closer to get a better angle. There we go. So they need still to be filled out from the inside, because we build them with in between an insulation piece. This is how it looks on the outside. So they are already all filled out. I hope you get a we can see, on this one we can see nicely how the light comes through the bottle wall. Brown bottles mixed with white combined gives this beautiful orange, and then the green and blue combinations with it. So this is the part of the simple survival Earthship. Electricity has just been rough installed, and here we have the water pipe coming in from the cisterns in the back of the Earthship where we go later, and this goes all through the berm to the cisterns, and is also at the same time a cooling tube. So what is a cooling tube? So at that place we start with one of the Earthship principles, which is heating and cooling. So what does heating and cooling mean in an Earthship? So first of all, it's a passive solar house. That means the sun is the main, most important part of the heating. So we have these big south-facing windows, and the sun comes through those windows into the house and warms it up. Pretty simple. And you see in the back that tire wall is like a piece of mass. It's filled with earth and surrounded by a big berm, so it kind of works like a battery, and it heats it up just from the heat of the sun. I've been out here in the winter many times. Even you can see it's not fully insulated yet. It's all a bit in a rough shape. The floor is not in yet, but it was still at -30 outside. Comfortable, warm in here. You could sit here in your winter jacket and do a sunbathing. So that is what heating does. And of course there's times where additional heat is necessary. For that is the wood stove you saw earlier. And yeah, one point to mention is that over time those tire walls heat up more and more. They really are like a battery which kind of fills up over the years and then give a warm, comfortable atmosphere. Cooling, that's what we need in the summer. Right now it's the beginning of June and we had already pretty hot days, and it's been incredibly cool in here. Maybe because the floor isn't yet finished and it's still moisture coming from the ground, but it's really comfortable. And another important point to say is the angle of the sun. In the winter, the angle of the sun is so low that the sun comes through the windows and heats up the tire wall. And in the summer, the sun is so high already. By sometime in April, it hardly reaches the whole building. It only reaches the greenhouse area, which is fantastic. So the sun stays out and keeps it cool. And in addition to this, Earthship Biotechnology has developed the cooling tubes, which I showed you earlier. They go through the earth berm into the Earthship. Maybe I can get it here again. Here's one more in the round space. See there behind me, between the sawhorses, there we have the cooling tube, which lets cool air in the summer, and through the skylight or the vent boxes. I'll try to show you the vent boxes up here. So the skylight you can see here in the back, which is operable. There it creates a draft so that the cool air gets pulled in and pulled out of the skylight. The same here. Gosh, my video skills, I'm just learning. We have the skylights, which is not yet fully functionable because there needs to be more work done on the roof. I'll show you it in a second. So I'm showing you here again the cooling tube inlet and the tire wall, which is also partly plastered with adobe plaster. I'm gonna talk a bit more about in a second, and I'll go up here, the roof with electricity in place, and there is the vent box. It's covered from the outside right now in order to prevent rain to come in, and soon, once it's sheeted with metal, it's operable, and then creates a draft for the hot air to be pulled out. Adobe plaster wall. So natural materials, recycled materials, one of the other big principles. Here we have a mix out of clay just from our ground with sand and straw. And that's been mixed last year and nicely placed in between the tires. And it's hard and ready for more layers, so that at the end all these tires will be completely covered and nicely smoothed out in a natural wall. On top of the tires you see the bond beam. That's a concrete beam in order to put everything properly in place, since the tire wall sits just on the bare ground, which has been leveled at the beginning. And yeah, what we have in the ground here as well is a weeping tile system in order to prevent moisture from the ground to destroy the building. And this here is the plumbing just started to be coming in place. The pipe you see there, the weeping tile is under the gravel and goes here into a sump pit with a connection there in place to pump water out if necessary. So this is our plumbing line here. And here we're coming right to the bathroom. There we go, having a bit of better view on the bottle wall on the side. And a fantastic view out of the bathroom. Can't wait to have a bathtub in place right there and look into this amazing landscape of our beautiful eco village. And have a view over there to the garden. That's the bathroom. Now I'm talking a bit more about the self-autonomy of an Earthship and why I find it's pretty genius, because it covers so many things in one piece. So we have talked about heating and cooling with the sun and the additive wood stove and the cooling pipes, and now we are going to look into food production. So this part here is a greenhouse part, you see, and here it's the living part right behind me, and then here behind me you see the planter bed, and that's where we grow food. Yeah, so the sun all year round helps to grow food indoors. It's just a greenhouse, as simple as it is. So, and then we have in this big area here, so here right behind me you see the two planter beds, one just in the building down there and then the other one in the back. There we go, and the bathroom is in the very back. There we go. And then we have here at the big window front in the dome part, there we have still a little sand depot, but that's also where all around those round windows there will be food production. There can be, even with the height of this building, can even try little fruit trees indoors, or even like a tropical lemon tree, or maybe I try a mango tree. So it will be a lot of experimenting also at the beginning, what will grow and what will the heat of the sun allow when it's -30 outside and nice and warm in here, hopefully. And then coming back to that autonomy part of the Earthship, so it generates its own heat, it collects the water from the roof, so that's something we haven't talked about yet, we're gonna look at that in a second. And you can produce your own food in the greenhouse, and then in the summer, of course, outdoors on your fields and gardens. And then the sewage system is another thing. I had to make slightly alterations because we have a high water table here in the interlake, And so I'm not doing the typical Earthship sewage system where water gets used through the planter beds and then used for the toilet. So I will have a compost toilet, so that's not necessary. And in order to have that treatment system under the planter beds, you need to dig deep into the earth, and that's not possible here because already by digging for the weeping tile in the spring now you reach already a high water level, so we cannot go further down. We need to go higher up, but that's okay. We will do a natural treatment plant outside, like yeah, I'll talk more about that in a second. And then also the topic of volunteerism. So you offer a source for that. So there's young people who come and want to help and want to learn new things and skills, and they come to volunteer, and you offer them in return food and accommodation. And I think that's a very wonderful thing to do in our time. You get to exchange stories with people from different places, and yeah, that is just very, very exciting. And then I'd like to talk a bit also about how is it possible to build an alternative building like that. So what's with permits and all the backgrounds. It's a little bit a hassle to prepare everything. So if you want to build an Earthship, you'll give yourself a good year before you really get started building to prepare everything, permits and collect tires and all these things. So I kind of gave myself probably for that half a year, and then started building with the tires and started pounding tires with the volunteers. Then the second half of the year. And I had like experienced people involved, 2 people who have learned at Earthship Biotecture, who were part of the build, and then other contractors and friends and people who helped. So it's been a whole big group involved, and still is. Now things are slowing a little bit more down because it's more the interior work happening. Volunteers are coming and different contractors are coming. And it's interesting for contractors too, though. Each trade has something specific about it. So the electricity has the solar coming with it. The plumbing has like the filtration system with it to filter the water from the cisterns. Then the eaves trough has to cover the inlet into the cistern. So each trade has a little bit something else, and I've been experiencing so far with those people who have been coming, yeah, they found that quite interesting, that there's something slightly different. And then of course with the custom model with the roof, this round roof, that was quite also something. Not everybody wanted to do the job, so I needed to look for people in order to do that who were excited about doing something a bit out of the box. So it's definitely something out of the box, and you need to be prepared for that. But I think the more these things are happening, the more people will remember, oh, there is maybe the same plumber coming to the next Earthship. Oh yeah, I've been to that one, I know how that goes. And then over time, we will have a few trade people here in Manitoba who know about it, and that is quite helpful. So, and I got help also from the other Earthship in the Clandeboine area. They helped me at the beginning with the engineer to stamp the drawings and all these things. So I'll talk a bit about that. So permits, yeah, it's a process, but they are willing, but it's also not so easy for them, but it's a process, but it's possible, and you just have to cover the bureaucratic requirements. It takes some time, but it's possible. And then one more point is the cost. So an Earthship comes for the same price like a normal house. So this Earthship is the size of around 1,100 square feet, almost 1,200. I'm not giving you now a detailed number, but if you buy a decent family house in the city, so you come to the same price. But you get more out of it because you don't have to pay for electricity, you don't have to pay for water, you don't have to pay for heat once all the systems are properly installed. So you have an upfront cost. The solar system is mostly the highest cost, and roof and those kind of things, cisterns. So they are upfront costs, but like I said, costs which are also in a normal house. And once it's there, you don't have the running costs like when you're in the city. That gives you definitely per month several $100 less payments you have. Okay, now let's walk a bit around the house to check out the water catchment system, which is half in place. And we had this last night, a big rainfall, and I have covered the first water in the cisterns from the rain, so that's quite exciting. And I'll now show you around. We're going now around, and I show you a bit more about the berm around the house too. So here is where the window front ends, and here's a retaining wall of tires which holds the berm into place. There you see the earth berm, which is all around the Earthship. Now I'm gonna go up here. So there is a view on the roof. Nice metal roof. See the metal pieces from the outside. So they still need to be cladded in metal. And covering piece, which is sitting here, also needs to be cladded in metal. And there's our round roof. See the stovepipe coming out and the open skylight. The round roof still needs to get metal shingles. That was one of the most hardest jobs, to get somebody to cover this roof with metal shingles, because you're collecting your water from the roof. You don't want asphalt there. You need to have metal to keep the water clean. So here's the eaves trough. That's basically just normal eaves trough system on this part. And then we're going around here. Here we have an arm from the eaves trough coming towards the cistern. So this is the inlet into the cistern. There's two cisterns in this berm. So this is all berm I'm standing on here. Sorry about all the garbage, building garbage, not properly cleaned up yet. And here it goes down. So there's more berm shaping necessary throughout this year by a bigger machine once we have everything in place. Let's look at our water catchment. Water from the rain on the roof goes into the eaves trough, goes into this thing, and here into the cistern. I've built a funny thing there to clean it from debris and dirt, so with a mesh, and there's a bowl in it with gravel also to filter dirt. And here we see, there it comes out and goes in here. Through the bowl has a hole in the bottom, and then it fills that huge cistern. And it was like 2-3 inches from the last night's rainfall. I've measured with this log here, where I put a mark on it, how much water is back into the cistern. And then the water in the cistern, like you saw at the very beginning of this video, comes out of the wall from the other side and will get a filtration system installed, and then can be used for washing and everything pretty much, and also drinking. There will be 4 different filters for the water, and then you saw the plumbing lines that will be connected to the intake through the tire wall from these 2 cisterns. This is number 1 here. Number 2 is not hooked up yet because we need first the metal shingles on that roof part, and then number 2 will be guided in that, and eaves troughs all around here is still to come. Show you now around here. That's quite fancy how we covered here the connection between the dome roof and the flat roof, or like a slightly angled roof. That is where most of the water still gets in right now, and can't wait until the installer will be coming to finish the roof here. So this is all nicely smoothed in there. That's what I wanted in my organic architecture design. So it's possible, but yeah, it needed the right people to take on this job, which I'm really grateful for. So here, that black stuff I talk a bit about, that's called EPDM, and that is like a very intense moisture barrier. It's flapped up here by the wind. I'm gonna put that right back here. So the EPDM is all around, attached from the roof to the berm, because the berm, the earth berm here, connects right with the roof. See it over there, earth and roof, and EPDM helps to keep the water out of the house. Very, very important feature. And on top of this EPDM, there's still earth to come for the final finishing here. With these strong winds in the prairies, yeah, that's what it is. Right, here, still on the berm, you see it here, more garbage, berm, slightly sloping down, and now we are on the other side of the Earthship, with the other retaining wall which holds the berm in place here with the tires. Going down now, getting super muddy feet because of the rain. Our clay, our soil is very rich on clay, which is good to make adobe plaster, but your shoes look, it's not too bad, look like whatever. So that's the other retaining wall here. There you see again the berm, and there we are back to that round part from the house. Okay, now I'm talking about, why building something like this, or why are we doing this video, and what do I want to share with this and inspire. So first of all, we have covered all those principles and the autonomy of this building. And I mean, yeah, we don't know what kind of times we will be facing over the next decades, and I think it's good to be prepared. And one point I like to mention, I mean, also the tire wall itself, whatever can come there, and catastrophes like hurricanes, we don't have that here, but tornadoes or any like wind damage, so could maybe happen here and there a bit on the roof. But so there's definitely a solidity to this building, and then of course all the features, what it combines in one piece. So you're not dependent on a well, because you have the rainwater catchment, you have the sun, you have your own food production. So I think these things to have, these are buildings made for the future, for our times and what is to come. And that's what I want to share with this, and that's why I'm doing it. And it's exciting. It's also very hard. So it's great, but it's also hard. But I want to encourage you and not discourage you, because it brings also a lot of beautiful things in the process. I feel the Earthship is something you need to see the process. You need to give yourself time of a few years to go into this process. So first of all, to start with all the tire work, to fill them with dirt and all the labor. It's a lot, but it's also beautiful. You have community, you have people, you have friends helping you. You need to organize it, but yeah, it happens. So, and we had tire pounding jams and volunteers from different places from the world here, and last spring and the year before in the fall to cover all the tire pounding. And that's part of the Earthship principles too, not principles, but of what Earthship is community. So you cannot build a house like this by yourself. You need people. And there's always people who are interested and are inspired and want to help. Like myself, I helped at the other Earthship here in Manitoba, and I was in Taos, New Mexico, and was happy to help. So it's something is coming with this process. You just want to be part of it, and there's lots of joy involved in building something together.
Nice tour of the ship, the Earthship. So Monica, if we can get you on screen here. And now we have her live and in person. Who knows which side she's on. So hi, Monica, welcome. Sorry, the amount of times I've pointed someplace in my Zoom screen and people are like, who are you pointing at?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for holding tight through the video. Apologize for the bit handmade way. So it's been actually my first video I've really like done to do and so yeah, thank you for coming and for your interest, and now would be the space to answer all your questions. So yeah.
All right, so I know, Monica, you answered a few of them in the chat, but we're just going to go over them again. So first of all, we have a question about the cooling tubes. Can you just get into a little bit more about how they work and what's at the other end of the tube?
Yeah, right. So yeah, the cooling tube. So if you look at the end of the video where we were walking around the berm, where it goes down on the berm, there is the other opening of the cooling tube. And so the cool air goes through the tube because it goes through the berm. I don't know how wide the berm is, maybe a few meters wide, definitely. And then it slopes down and the cooling tube goes all through and into the building. And it will be open on the outside so that air can constantly come in. We might do like a temporary cover thing so that it can be covered when the water melt happens in the spring, because that seems to be becoming eventually an issue. There was no water in this spring, so that's great through the cooling tubes. But it's also still kind of not quite yet finished. Like I said, the earth berm needs some more detailed work there. And then, yeah, the vent box is open, and then air gets pulled up, and that at the same time pulls the cool air in through the cooling tube, through the berm. Does that answer your question?
I'm sure if there's a follow-up question, we'll have it land here in the chat. Oh, Kurt's here to follow up. Hi.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. Yeah, so it's basically the outside of the cooling tube is outside. So even though the outside air might be warm, the air is cooled as it travels through the berm.
Right.
And it's drawn by the fact that there's convection happening through the vent tube, so the circulation happens that way. But even though it might be 30-degree outside air, it's cooled as it goes through the berm. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Thanks for for adding that detail. Maybe I didn't make it enough.
Thanks, Monica.
Yeah. It's good to think about those details. Yeah. So I haven't actually used them yet because they're not fully ready. But yeah, but what I can feel now, even like with the open floor, it's really cool in there. So, and that's the same thing with the berm. That is just a mass of earth, and So actually, while the heat travels through the cooling tube in the berm, it cools down. That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
Oof, so interesting. And hey, everybody, we just saw how Kurt just hopped on to ask a follow-up question. So very good, Kurt. We love this. Getting a little dynamic, making sure that I'm not butchering questions. Just to clarify, Monica, how much is this off-grid? How much is the building is off-grid?
Yeah, it's completely off-grid. That was also the reason I decided for this kind of building, because it's the first house of an off-grid eco-village. Electricity comes from solar panels and batteries and the whole solar system. Water like through the rainwater catchment and filtration, and heat through the sun and the additive wood stove. So there's no connection to the grid.
Okay, just to follow up, just to fully confirm, so some folks who have been in off-grid workshops before said that the buildings couldn't be 100% off-grid because they had to access things like the smoke detectors. So just like, how did the fire code work around that piece of, even if the smoke detectors are solar powered?
Well, the smoke detectors are mostly actually battery powered.
Oh, okay.
So that's what they are here in the city house where I live. And in the electrical plan, the smoke detectors are integrated. And the whole electricity is connected to a solar system with certain batteries and inverter and charge controller, which still is going to be finally installed once things are a little bit more ready. So that shouldn't be a problem. So the electricity and everything has been done to code.
Mm. Good. Okay. So just a quick question about the water filtration. So is all of the water filtered, or is there the use of gray water for toilets?
So all the water is filtered, and there's 4 different filters. It starts from more like the coarse parts into more detailed filtration. And then there's a little, so you can have through 3 filters, then you have your water just for washing and cleaning and whatever you need. And then there's 1 more filter to making it into drinking water. So, and with my alteration, there is no, so it's not that the water like in typical Earthship goes through the greenhouse and waters the plants. Like I said, because of our high water table, I cannot do that. So, and the compost toilet is there, so there's no need for anything else. And then the septic will be just guided out of the house into a mounted septic system. That's a newer ecological form of septic system. Septic tank and then septic field, and the septic field is a mounted septic field.
Okay. Right. So can you just talk a little bit more about the roof? That was a hard part to hear in the video. Are there any specific highlights about the roof that you wanted to make sure that we all heard?
Yeah, so maybe you couldn't hear that with the metal roof, that it's important to have a metal roof. You could eventually also at the dome move go with wood shingles. So that was a question, that was a decision I had to make, but I decided then for metal, and it was quite a challenge to find something to cover the round roof, because you don't want to have asphalt shingles, because you're collecting the water from the roof, and asphalt, that is not what you want to have in your drinking water. So it's very important to have a metal roof on these kind of buildings. And what we came up with now with my roof builders, so we found a source for metal shingles. They will be going on that round part. So then we can collect the water from both roofs.
Nice. All right, can you just tell us where in Manitoba-ish the Earthships are that exist?
It's north of Toulon in the Interlake. It's an hour drive from Winnipeg.
And how about some of, oh, sorry, go.
Yeah, I like to say here to everybody, so the building is by far not done yet. So whoever is interested, feel free to message me or email me. I can maybe share later my email address, and I welcome people to come out and visit and volunteer all over the summer. So that is still options for that.
Yeah, we were really excited to get the opportunity to tour the building before it was completely finished, when some of these cool features were hidden behind the finished job. So thank you for the timing on this. And yes, if anybody doesn't catch Monica's contact info, you can also email info@sustainablebuildingmanitoba.ca, and I will help make the connection. Also, really happy to do that for sure. Okay, just to follow up on the cooling system. With the cooling tube, how do you handle condensation accumulating and stale water accumulation in conjunction with that? So the water of it and condensation.
Yeah, that's a good question, which I can not completely answer yet because I haven't experienced it yet, what's going to happen. I only know from an Earthship friend, Jim Nell, who runs the Canada Earthship Facebook page. So I'll talk with him a lot and ask him questions. He's really helpful. So I know that he had to close his cooling tubes or something because of the moisture problem. But I mean, every area is different. I think we'll see this how it goes over time, right? I mean, moisture, that's what many people say in general is a problem or is a downside of Earthships. The moisture I'm having right now is that one coming from the ground. Not really coming from the ground, more like leaking in because the roof is not really finished. So I can't really tell these details, but the only thing I experience over the winter is like there is a lot of moisture built up when the sun heats up the building, and there is no outlet for the moist air to go. So it's important to have the vent boxes open as much as possible. And in the winter, so I have also, in order to meet code, I have an heat exchange system in the design for the winter. So there is I think it's a little machine, like a ventilation machine, which also runs on solar to heat exchange. So, I mean, yeah, we'll just see how all that goes. There's lots to experiment still in the process.
Always, yes. So the greenhouse space, is it separate from with the walls in the living space? So is the greenhouse space separated with walls from the living space?
So it's partly separated from the living space through also window walls. Maybe you couldn't see that well on the video, maybe, yeah. And then there's open spaces where greenhouse and living space connect, and I will probably cover those open spaces with the curtain, but in order to meet code, I had to leave it open. So yeah, it's partly closed in by windows in keeping more heat in the living space. So in the winter, you want to have the sun coming all the way in, and in the night, so that's why I decided to put a curtain. Then I put a curtain there where not the second window line is, in order to keep heat in the living space.
Great, great, great. All right. People are wondering a little bit more about some of the gray water. So can you just say a little bit more about the gray water waste system and how that piece of it will work?
Actually, I must admit, I don't know. So,
no judgment.
Because it's a lot to cover a build like this if you don't have a contractor and do it kind of yourself, just with help of other contractors and friends. We have one community member who is a bit more in contact with that kind of mounted septic system. So the only thing I can tell you, gray water goes out. The only gray water we'll be having is from kitchen. From kitchen, dishes, and washing. And that needs to go first into a septic tank and then into a septic field. So that's how the gray water is going to work. But there's no watering of plants in the greenhouse through the gray water because we couldn't dig deep into the earth to build that system because of the high groundwater table in that specific area.
Okay, so can you just, oh, sorry.
Yeah, one more thing. So the laundry will be in our community laundry place at another place of the eco village. So this is also why I don't have much gray water. There is a compost toilet which works in itself. The compost will be taken out into a compost bin in the outside. We have already a communal one in the eco village, and the water, the gray water for laundry will be managed in a kind of similar way, septic tank and mounted septic field at that community laundry place, which is also in the build right now.
Cool, that's really cool. So can you tell us about what the most difficult aspect of the construction that may lead to a crucial performance issue was? What was the most difficult aspect of the construction?
Oh, that's here from Lawrence, eh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Most difficult aspect of the construction may lead to crucial performance issues throughout the year. I don't know. I mean, I found crucial roof so far because it could have been already done with metal and everything, but it was really hard to find somebody. So like major metal companies didn't want to take on the job because they didn't want to take that risk. So I'm taking their certain risk with that metal shingle roof, and also to clad vent boxes is not very familiar for the normal metal roofers. So that's been the most difficult part to get it going. I would have liked to have the metal roof finished last October. I could have, if maybe, roofers would have been more upfront what they can do and what they can't. So the first roofer who put just on that slightly angled roof a metal piece just didn't come back. So that was also an experience, like, that was not very pleasant. I don't know why that is so complicated, because it's not the typical roof, and I think the combination of metal and then the custom design round roof, and it's not only round, so it has really different angles and shapes where the two buildings meet. So that has probably been a challenge, but I hope we solve that now, because I have interested builders and they are on this right now, and I hope in a few weeks we have that covered.
Great. Yeah. That does sound really tough to have somebody just not come back. Can you tell us about the snow melting? Does that provide water in the winter?
Yes, that definitely provides a lot of water. Unfortunately, I didn't have that collection system in place for this spring, but I know that from the other Earthship owners. So I think the snow melt fills most of the cisterns each year. So I think that's how it goes. I see it at our ponds. They are full after the winter, and now they go slowly down through the condensation. So definitely snow melt a big part, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was there any consideration given for an HRV for ventilation during the winter?
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. There is a heat exchange system that's been in the design of the engineer for HVAC, yeah. But not a separate ventilation system, because that would eventually require too much electricity. So yeah, this is all also step by step to follow up. So I'll start with the heat exchange, and I know there were problems with vent boxes by the other Earthship, but I will just see how it goes. So Earthship Biotecture has altered a bit the vent boxes too, and since I have a normal skylight in the other part of the building, I'm just going with experiencing it and then making eventually later any alterations. But to fully answer the question, no extra ventilation system in the HVAC, no.
Now, from talking to you, Monica, I know that you did have some problems with or just some challenges with some of the permitting. Do you just want to get into some of that a little bit? You touched on it before, but anything else that you wanted to share about the permitting process?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually right now again in conversation with the fire commissioner. Honestly, what I need to say or like to say about is that like you're gonna get put a bit on the side because you don't fit in a typical system what they inspect or look at. But I must also say there has been conversation, but there have been long times of not following up conversation. So that's been a bit frustrating. So, and now I'm at the phase of inspection. So, but now conversation is happening. So I'm hopeful that will go well step by step.
All right, well, thank you. So that pretty much brings us to the end of our time together, but is there any final thoughts that you wanted to share with us, Monica, before we say thank you for the tour?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining and for your support here. Some people I have seen are on the talk, which I know, and yeah, thank you for being there. And it would have been nice to see people who are joining in the talk and talk a bit more with who is here, honestly. If somebody is interested and just wants to say something, that I'd appreciate that, but it's okay if not. So
yeah, if people I'll ask the final question, but if anybody wants to hop on with a question after me, that's great. So just curiosity about the permits. Did most of them go through the municipality, or was it through the province?
So the permits go through the Winnipeg Fire Commissioner, because RM of Armstrong, that's the municipality where the Earthship is placed, and they work with the Winnipeg Fire Commissioner because they don't have their own. Some rural municipalities have their own fire commissioner. So people always need to talk with their rural municipality first and then see how things are governed in each rural municipality.
That's a good tip, thanks. All right, anything from anyone? Oh, Christina, did you want to say something?
No, I just thought I'd show my face because Monica was asking, and that's nice to see everyone.
Totally. Well,
wonderful.
Why don't, just before we sign off, we can do a big hello and goodbye to everybody. So yeah, thanks everybody. Whoa, I love this. All of the faces. Thank you everyone for taking the time today to join us. I think that this was a really nice way to spend a lunch hour. Again, we're doing this next week to see some prefabrication building facilities and just like getting a little bit more into deep energy retrofits. We're going to be going to Ontario to see some of what they're doing there, see what we can steal over here in Manitoba. And then the following week on June 24th, we're going to be headed back up to Churchill to check out some rocket greens. So how are they getting fresh food up there? So that's going to be exciting. And again, thank you to Duxton Windows for helping sponsor this whole event. And thank you to you folks, because without you folks, what would we be doing? We'd be doing this for nothing. So thank you so much for being a part of this community and for caring and for helping to build a better Manitoba. So thanks everybody. We'll see you next week, we hope. Yeah.
Thank you, Laura, for doing all this.
Oh, you're welcome.
Good inspiration.
Yeah. To see you guys. Now I see you here on my, okay.
Amazing. And get in touch if you'd like to. We're happy to connect you to Monica. So info@sustainablebuildingmanitoba.ca. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye, everybody.